All right, we'll call the work session to order. We won't take any official action. And public comments. Do we have public comments somewhere? He left. And virtually we have Jacob, Carmen, and Sarah. Is that correct? It's not good when I can't see. All right, so Dean, you're up. Public comments.
Oh. Thank you for putting up with me harping on the safety on 101, trying to slow it down.
No, you're definitely correct.
Well,
but it's
you know, the thing is, I worked in the fire department in the Sunset District in San Francisco, and we called it Sunset Roulette. You know, because we had a fender bender almost every day, you know, the uncontrolled intersections. But we didn't have fatalities because it wasn't that fast.
right.
They were shook up. We taped them down on the backboard and stuff. But I was putting my phone on airplane mode, and I remember the other day I was holding it so firmly because I was running across 4 lanes of 101, and I figured, man, if I drop this phone, if I stop to get it, I'm dead on 101. Anyway. What I'd like to do, that is the master plan that Reedsport did to, that's what Brown Engineering worked on to slow down and make the corridor through Reedsport safer. They were having kids hit going from the 7-Eleven over to the thing. And the city... ODOT had to do that. Yeah, the city tried to do it, and then ODOT said, no, it's up to us, because with 4 lanes, you actually need an island for older people to you know, if they can't make it all over the car. So anyway, that's the master plan that Brown Engineering did. I'm sure that Knife River could do the same thing here.
There's no doubt that it can be done. I don't think that's the issue.
So, but the last email that Mike Powder and I got from Glenn Pedersen, who was too scared to stand out on the corner and look at the traffic. I swear to God. The last email we got from him was that the city had to initiate the study. So all we have to do is ask.
We'll look into that.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
Chelsea, so that would be Jennifer, correct?
Correct.
All right. So will you
I'll make a note to
ask her
about
All
that.
right.
Yes.
Thanks. I appreciate it. All right. So next item is review upcoming city council and URA board action items. Who's going to handle this? You?
Well, we have a land use training that Hui Radomski, our regional South Coast regional representative, is going to provide for us today.
All right.
And so Hui, I think, will be coming up to the podium and we'll show she has a presentation.
All right.
So it is your time, Hui. Time to shine.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm really happy to be here today in person. I told the mayor prior that last year I did this virtually, I think for a planning commission, and because I couldn't make it in person, it was jet lag and everything. Anyways, and so the reason I'm stressing the point is because this presentation is best done in person, so which is why I'm very excited to finally be here in front of you in person today. And so let's see. Okay, I'm gonna back up real quick to my. Oh, see, because the screen is not the point to the machine rather than the screen. I go back to my title slide. Is it? Boop. Boop. I think so. It says on. I'm going to do off and on again. Let's see if that helps. Did it go? No. Let's do that. I guess, or do you mind paging back? Okay. As Chelsea said, my name is Hui Radomski, and I am the South Coast Regional Representative for the Department of Land Conservation and Development, also known as DLCD. And I have a picture of Coos Bay on the slide. I like to put a picture of the city or county on my title slide when I give a presentation, and I found this one, and it's a Coos Bay on it, and it didn't look like the Coos Bay I knew, and gave me a little bit of stress, actually, looking at that image of what's supposed to be Coos Bay. So what it actually is a, you guys know SimCity? Have you SimCity, the computer game where you can make your own cities? So a user actually made this to be Coos Bay. So I thought it was interesting. But also, this is relevant because land use planning is what, if we want that, we'll have to do a lot of work to be that. If we don't want that, we'll also do work to not be that. Basically, it's whatever we want for our community is what we have to work for. And again, this is quite a it's a lot of development on what is a hypothetical Coos Bay. Yes, yeah, also skyscrapers, yes. Right, yes, yeah, I don't know how many years it will take.
Anyway, I'm sure I won't be around by the time that happens.
Right. Okay, so outline for today is a brief history of the Oregon's land use system, and then how the system is set up. Then I go into just briefly types of land use decisions that there are, and how to hold a fair and impartial tribunal, and then finally, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Oregon Coastal Management Program. Let's see. Oh, sorry. That way. Okay, so before I start my little outline there, I like to also ask the question of what is land use planning? And maybe I should also tell you a little bit about myself. So I work as a land use planner now, but I did not go to planning school. I took one course in land use planning, but my background is actually in biology and environmental science. My first job out of college was on commercial fishing boats in Alaska and Hawaii as a fisheries observer biologist to collect data on fishing efforts for NOAA to better manage the fisheries. After going out to sea, as a job, and a young person, after a while you don't want to go out to sea anymore because you kind of hard to plan a life if you're going out to sea. And if you're not a captain, you can't say, okay, we're going to go back in now because you're not a captain. You don't get to say that or do that. So went back to graduate school, and try to figure out what to do. And then I settled on and actually am deeply invested in coastal land use because I figured to connect. I didn't want to throw away my experience in the fisheries because I think once you go out and live on the sea for a while, it does get in you, and it's hard to let that go, so to speak. So coastal land use is my tie to my past life, so to speak, of being on the boats. And because my conviction also is, if we can do land use in the coastal areas better, then water quality is better, then everything downstream, which includes the ocean, will be better. So that's my motivation in being a coastal land use planner. So what is land use planning? And I give my background because, again, I didn't go to planning school, so I don't have a textbook definition of what land use planning is. And so I would like to hear maybe some of your thoughts of what you think land use planning is.
What land use planning is?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You guys want to start?
I'll say a couple words, and then you can say a couple. Basically, we try to decide what type of buildings or property goes where, and have the rules and regulations to go with that, and occasionally make exceptions, but for the most part, we try to make it so that the city is planned in such a way that it doesn't become a total chaos.
Yep.
Well, I think there's kind of two edges to this, to the planning sword. One is, well, cities and outside the city, there's a big difference there. But highest and best use is always the first, should be the first concern. But many times that isn't the same in a larger city as it would be in Coos Bay. And also you have to deal with the landowners. And I think that's huge. One of my biggest concerns, whether it be Fish and Wildlife or NOAA or whoever, is the people making these decisions are not vested in the land. Often they do not own real property, or they, and especially in my case, I'm meeting with Fish and Wildlife and NOAA tomorrow on an issue, because if they don't own the land, and yet they make the rules, that there's a real significance there. So anyway, but getting back to land use planning, sure, we need to have planning, and we need to have different zones, and so it isn't just a mess like Singapore or something like that. So yeah, I guess that's rambling a bit, but it's my view on land use planning, and I guess the biggest thing would be highest and best use.
I was going to say a plan for responsible development that takes into consideration just what Rex was saying, you know, people who live here, and whether that's development or not developing, you know, it has both pieces to it. But something that helps to reduce conflict, but at the same time meets the needs of a community, making it livable.
I suppose my thought from an ideological standpoint is that it's a community's opportunity to decide how they want to look now and in the future, where growth won't happen, and to Rex's point, is what is the best use of that? Where is our best suited? Industrial, residential, commercial, parks, and how we protect the human interests as well as environmental interests for a long-term sustainability.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Balanced development, you know, commercial, industrial, green spaces, housing, and working with regulations that allow us to do those or do not do those. Some of the frustration, I guess, that, you know, goes along with what Rex says and Troy and Stephanie. The thing is that these regulations change, and then it makes it difficult to proceed in something or do something. FEMA buyout is one of them. I just got done at a LOAC meeting, and it came up during the discussion that riprap and sheet piling won't be allowed anymore. So we won't be able to backfill our bay. Like, for instance, right now we're having difficulty with our asphalt walkway down there, and I don't know how we're going to stop that sloughing off unless we're able to do, I don't know what. So I asked if it was pertaining to bays, and they said yes. I thought it was just going to be for, you know, along the shores, but that's not the case. So anyway, dealing with those type of things can make it difficult.
Thank you all so much. Anyone online would like to join in on this amazing conversation?
Sarah, Jacob, Carmen?
Yeah, I'll chime in. I would just say it's our roadmap to what we really want to see our community to be. So, with the scope of just planning with land. And I'll say I'm looking forward to learning more about it, because this is my first experience really delving deep into this topic. So, I'm learn.
Sarah, any comment?
Okay, well, I want to say that you have all touched on really great points, and I'm really honestly I'm just energized by your responses because, yes, best and highest use and making decisions for the community. And people making the rules are not necessarily people who own the land. And that includes yourselves. You're making rules too. So, yes, it's very complicated to try to do land planning for a whole community. We have, so many different interests, so many different backgrounds, different ownerships, just different knowledge base, different just about everything. And so what do we do then? And so this picture is my illustration of sort of the core of the Oregon Lands program is the process. Because of all these various things, how do we, as a community, come to a decision to make a community that we envision, that we want? So in my picture here, it's basically one operator, say a farmer, a homesteader, who's making a decision, owns one piece of property, one ownership, and it's easy for this person to say, I want to put the hogs away from the house, I want to put the crops near, or things I eat near the house, and things that are compatible, maybe, rotate my crops here and there. So it's easy when it's one person making a decision for one piece of land. It's very difficult when it's, I don't know how many ownerships are in the city of Coos Bay, we have to somehow figure out how do we have compatible uses and zones that are compatible and have enough development to be livable, to have jobs and all these things, but still protect our environment so that we can have still good quality of environment to live in. So thank you so much for all your responses because, yes, all those, and thank you for just being part of the process. And so again, Oregon's lands program is the process itself, how to make decisions, is the thing we can agree on, is the process. But whatever happens, all the facts and everything else, it just kind of adds to it. But the process, what we want to adhere to the most. So I'll just kind of stress that point is, if the process is not followed, adhered to properly, it's a very easy appeal. If decisions made, process is not followed correctly, very easy for it to be appealed. And then the courts would just say, remand it back to the local government and say, you do it again, but this time with the right process. Okay. I am pointing at the computer. It is? Okay, it's a lag. What is it showing on your computer? Should I press again, or is it already? Okay. Okay, then I go back one more. Okay, it did. Okay, but the share screen's not showing yet.
Where's Clay? He ran off?
Okay, but it's showing on your screen and not showing on. What if you, I don't know, unshare and share again and see if that will fix it?
Is that one of them?
Yeah, Governor Tom McCall. It is the one, yeah, that's right. If I, okay, okay, now it's working. Okay. Okay. All right, so I think we already addressed some of these when we had our discussion of what is land use planning. And this is my little list of why land use planning. And again, I did not go to planning school, so this is not from a textbook. It's just me being a practitioner. So environmental protection, avoidance of urban sprawl, which is what Oregon really strives for. We don't want to have just, sprawl everywhere and then there's no more natural environment around. promotion of compatible uses. And the fourth one, increase certainty for developers and buyers. This one I like to emphasize because some people, or I think, I think it's fair to say that not everybody likes rules of what to do on land or other places too. But my point with this increased certainty for developer buyers is that having regulations and having rules helps with your investment, because if you buy, say, a piece of land that's residential and you want to use it for residential, and that zone that way, and there are regulations of what you can and cannot do, then you can be assured that your investment in this residential property will continue to be that. And that if there's no incompatible uses around you, if you're, say, in the middle of the zone, but typically you want to have, say, residential and then maybe a buffer of a commercial and then industrial, if you're buying in residential zone, that your next door neighbor is not going to become a junkyard because there's regulations of the land use. So you can complain to your your city staff, like, hey, my neighbor's accumulating cars, and what do I do? It's just everywhere now. And another analogy I like to use is international companies don't like to go into countries that don't have regulations for businesses, because then the state can just take over the assets whenever they want to. So regulations can be good for business, are good for business. To an extent, obviously, we don't want to, kill the business with too much regulations either. But I just want to say that regulations is not all bad. So having some rules is also good for investment.
So wait, on this increase, certainly for developers, so is there a grandfather type situation if a person has a piece of property? I mean, and they bought it with that criteria and those regulations? Can there be something that comes along and changes that regulation so they can't develop it the way they intended?
Well, typically, if you're talking about grandfathered use, so typically, in I guess the planning jargon, we call that non-conforming use. So typically, it'll be a use that's already established prior to the new regulations coming in. So it was lawful when it was established. So now laws have changed, but it's still, if it's at least so I also work for Lincoln County as a planner. So in Lincoln County, at least, if your use was continuous, as long as it's continuous, then you can keep on using it that way. And if you want to expand it a little bit, or you just have to apply for, I'm still doing this use, but I want to maybe add a little bit to my building or whatever. So yes, grandfather uses are allowed. Just, there's just standards of what process that you need to go through to continue using it. Also, if you stop using it for some places, maybe it's a longer term, just time frame, So if if it's abandoned, then you can't revive it, so to speak. So it has to be continuous. So sometimes, like if the building, say, burns down, then you say have 1 year to get a building permit. And then you don't have to build it within a year, but get a building permit within that year to continue your use. Okay. This is a Google map of Coos Bay, and I believe the red line is city limits. So I just typically like to show a picture of the local geography so that when we're talking about land use planning, that's the boundary of your influence. But we are working on expanding UGB for Coos Bay. So I know this is not UGB, it's the city limits, but you will also have some influence over once the UGB gets expanded to the other parts of this geography that we're looking at. Okay, and this is a real picture of Coos Bay, and this brings me a lot more stress. I mean, less stress than the first picture in the title slide. And I just thought it was a really nice picture of Coos Bay. Okay. So Senate Bill 100 is the Senate bill that basically created our modern organizing system. And so the quote from Tom McCall, who was the governor that both championed and signed it into law. So he says, we're talking about more than preserving the beauty of Oregon. We're talking about the economy and the environment. We're talking about balance. In short, we're talking about people and the land. And that is very true to our land use program, is people and the land. And the process of how to make everybody get what they need from the land. But it is a balance. So the name of my department is Department of Land Conservation and Development. And so we do have a dual objective of doing both, which, it can be hard and is a balance. I know people some people anyway, like to say, oh, just stop at conservation. Don't say and development because you're just conservation. And I think, that's a little bit of disservice to the process itself, because we do want to work on development. We do that. So I think just counting that part of my department is, I don't know, I think it's not good for us working together to figure out, what else we can do to help the community. I'm not saying that anyone in this room is saying that. I'm just saying there are. In the state somewhere, somebody's saying that.
But those rules change, right? I mean, the way, if I understand it correctly, so you have the legislature that enacted rules or I guess LOAC enacted rules too. They have certain authority. Is that correct?
I don't think LOAC enact rules. I think maybe
LOAC, I mean LCDC.
they do make rules. Yes, yeah, policies. Yes.
But so is the legislature is that who really initiates all the rules? I mean, we went over a bunch of rules that were coming down, so,
I will admit that I'm not exactly sure on who initiates who gets the rules going. This is where I enjoy being just a regional rep. Just come and, hang out with you guys. Okay. So, let's see. Do you mind clicking maybe, because I don't know what kind of clicker. So this is a excerpt from the speech he gave when he signed Senate Bill 100 into law. Oh. Okay, so it's not gonna work. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I just want to play this clip from Governor McCall, because he just sort of put things in a good perspective, as he did. So, but it's okay. We don't have to listen to it. It's just a minute and a half of a clip. So I will just skip this and go to the next slide. So this is my history part of my presentation. Governor Tom McCall. So the first picture, Tom McCall and Hector McPherson. McPherson was a hog farmer, I believe, in Albany, and he was also in the legislature. And so in the late 60s, early 70s, he was observing that farmlands in the valley were getting basically developed into subdivisions. Because you can imagine farmlands are typically flat, and flatlands are easy to build on. And so those ones are the first ones typically to get built on. And so he was seeing this and was kind of worried for Oregon that the clip that was supposed to play was the spectators from California coming up here and building all the stuff, and not worrying about what happens to Oregon itself. So he was one of the champions and the early proponents of, hey, we need a land use system statewide. Otherwise, our farmlands are going to turn into subdivisions and just development in general. And so, so I have three governors on this slide: Tom McCall, Bob Straub, Vic Atiyeh, and also saw that Vic Atiyeh had give you a key back there. That's from him. And also L.B. Day, who was not a governor, but a legislator and a labor leader. And so when they were coming up with this, as you can imagine, a very top-down program of saying the state is now going to make all the cities and counties do this, that, is not, obviously not everybody that liked it. But the motivation and LB, so they listed LB Day's help because he was very popular and labor leader, was that if you save the farmlands, you will also save all the jobs that come with it. And that's not just the farmers, but also the people who make the equipment for farming, people who, say, store things, people who transport things, people who harvest, process, put it on the store shelves. So it's a whole slew of jobs comes from, say, 1 acre of farmland. And so LB Day got this, and being a labor leader, want to make sure that his people had jobs still, so was also supportive of Senate Bill 100. So this just to show that there was massive support, both sides of the aisle, for this top-down lands program.
So aren't a lot of the farmlands being up, north in the urban areas being built on for housing? I mean, when I went there before, yeah, I mean, I used to drive by and there'd just be these farmlands and orchards, and now they're all like apartments and schools and retail. And so I guess my question is, how are they allowed to do that if we're trying to preserve those things, which I think.
Right. Yes, that's a great point. So even though it's a top-down system, the local plans are still the plans that control what actually happens on the land. So if the comprehensive plan for the city or county had, I don't know exactly how, but because I'm not looking at this plan for that development you're talking about, but it's still local control. Decisions are made locally still. It's just, there are policies from the state agencies saying how and where, but still it's made locally, the decisions. So I don't know exactly how what you're describing happened.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I just watched. I mean, this was the intent.
This intent, yes.
Going away for other
Yeah.
development. And
Yes.
I'm curious on how that's able to happen. If this was the intent, and now it's not being followed, I guess.
Yeah, if I were our farm and forest specialist, I would tell you exactly how those happened. But unfortunately, I don't have that knowledge. I'm sorry. So it's a little bit of pre-modern history. So before 1973, which is when Senate Bill 100 was signed into law, cities could zone land 1919, 1947, counties could zone land, and then in 1963, we could zone land to be EFU, which is kind of what you're talking about too, the exclusive farm use zones, which are the most protected land zone in the state. So possibly if the farmland you're talking about turned into development, maybe it wasn't EFU, maybe it was a lower tier of farmland that was okay to be turned into development. That's my hypothesis. Okay, so what did Senate Bill 100 do? It created LCDC, the Land Conservation Development Commission, which is a 7 volunteer member commission, represents regions of the state, and provides a policy direction for our department. And also created staff for our department, so DLCD. And then also charge LCDC with adopting statewide planning goals. And I have a slide on that. And see, I think my next slide is, okay, so this is our current members of LCDC, and our current commissioner from the coast is Commissioner Leanne Thompson, who's a county commissioner in Clatsop County. And Melissa Cribbins used to be one of our commissioners as well. I think she was 2 commissioners ago for the coast position. After Melissa was Katie Jacobson from Lincoln County. And now it's Leanne Thompson. Okay, here's the statewide planning goals that Senate Bill 100 charged LCDC to adopt. And the colors are really off on the slide because the smallest box is supposed to be blue. So I can't tell you. So I'm just going to, I guess, describe it differently now. So these goals, 19 of them, are mostly in numerical order. The ones that are not in the boxes, goal 1 and 2, are what we call our process goals. So these are the goals that describe how we're supposed to carry out the land use program. And the one under 1 and 2, it's supposed to be green. It's kind of green. It's what we call our conservation goals. The one in the orange is our development goals. And the smallest box, supposed to be blue, is our coastal goals. So every city and county have to adopt a comprehensive plan that addresses all of the applicable goals to their jurisdiction. So for example, if you are Baker City, then you don't have any coastal goals. So your comprehensive plan doesn't have to have any coastal goals. You don't have address, beaches and dunes, goal 18. You don't have to address estuary resources because you don't have any. So there's one jurisdiction in the state that have to address all the statewide planning goals. Can you guess or deduce which one it is? So the tip or the clue is goal 15, Willamette River Greenway.
Must be Lane County.
Yes, sir, Lane County. Yes. So they have to have a comp plan that addresses all 18, because 19 ocean resources, that's a state jurisdiction, territorial sea. So yes, Lane County have to have a comprehensive plan that addresses all 18 goals, and it's the only jurisdiction in the state that has to do that.
Huh. Has to do it?
Yes, has to.
Okay.
Okay. So go to what does it do? Requires the government to have comprehensive plans, which I've been talking about, where Lane County needs to have one that addresses all 18 of the statewide planning goals. And so for Coos Bay, you just have to do 17 because you don't have Willamette River Greenway, but you have the rest of them. So comp plans, they have a factual base, so inventory of what's in your jurisdiction, and then you have to comply with the requirements of each of the applicable goals. And I'll just point out here that, well, two things. The second bullet, that the city follows the comp plan when making decisions on appropriate zoning. So your development code is subordinate to your comprehensive plan. If the two conflict, it's your comp plan that controls. So the comp plan has the last say. So you want to make sure that your zoning code doesn't conflict with your comp plan, because if that's the case and you make a decision on your zoning code, then that decision would not necessarily hold because the comp plan conflicts. The third bullet, city and county plans must be consistent with one another. So this kind of also goes to the Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan, which spans the county and the cities, but other plans too. So I just want to show these requirements so that just to kind of emphasize coordination as well. Okay, I just want to bring this up too. So what is the exception? Go-to has the process for how to apply for exception and what qualifies exception, and how to, justify your exception. So those of you on the council or planning commission, say in 2019, when there was exception to goal 16 before you for the estuary zone, for Jordan Cove, that was exception because the management unit for that project, project activity was not consistent with what that management unit has said could happen. So the applicant was hoping to get exception to the standards of that management unit in order to carry out the project activity in that in that geography, in the estuary. Okay, so in our lands program, these are the state's responsibilities. kind of hard to see, but I did make the other one small on purpose because I wanted to emphasize just the 3 that I've highlighted. One is set land use policy, goals and rules, review plan amendments. So anytime you change your comp plan or zoning code, you have to submit what we call a PAPA, as a post-acknowledgement plan amendments. It's basically you're just telling us what revisions you're trying to do, and then our staff will review to make sure it's still consistent with state policy. And then if we have concerns, we'll just give comments. If not, we typically don't say anything. And then the third highlight is provide technical assistance to cities and counties. So me, it was a technical assistance, a resource for you, and I tell everybody, you feel free to call me, email me, questions big and small. I come visit in person if you let me. If I don't know the answer, I'll find an answer from somebody that does, or find you the right person to talk to. So I am also a resource. And grants is my second bullet under that, which me and Chelsea are working on a grant right now for the UGB work. I just want to point out this picture. This picture is my former boss, who's still the current Lincoln County Planning Director, Arnold Husing, and he's standing north of Newport on Highway 101 at, as you can see, we mentioned riprap earlier, this Highway 101 that's eroding and needs to be protected. So for a while, Go 18 for a while did not allow any riprap if the development did not exist on January 1st, 1977. And the word on is very, very crucial as well. It has to be on that date. But when they made that rule, they did not count highways as development, which means even though Highway 101 was definitely developed on and before January 1st, 1977, we as a state, we kind of putting ourselves in the corner. We couldn't actually riprap it, even though it needs it. And also, there's no other option, honestly, to protect Highway 101 or to make, I should say, to continue having a coastal highway. We have to use riprap to protect it because there's not enough money or engineering or even like property owner consent to buy more land, say east of here even, to try to move the highway east. It's just impossible. Just don't, just waste of time or money trying to even think about it. So it's just impossible. So a few years ago, we're all aware of this. So a few years ago, our staff did workshops, and I think some advisory committee, a bunch of meetings, and try to figure out what do we do. So now there is an exception process that ODOT and anybody else want to fix 101 can apply for and be able to riprap Highway 101. So the first instance of this happening was in Curry County when, Curry County come on sliding off. So Curry County, ODOT applied to have exception to Go 18 so they can riprap a section of Highway 101 in Curry County. Okay, so local responsibilities, what are those? I have 2 icons here because it's where rubber meets the road, decisions made locally, and also where the heavy lifting is truly done. Because you're a local jurisdiction, you're making decisions, you're interacting with property owners, people who want to buy or people who want to develop. So you have to be constantly, Chelsea can tell you, you're constantly, trying to figure out answers for folks, solutions for folks, trying to think creatively so that folks can use the property how they want to, and also make the tougher decisions. Sometimes you have to say no. So yeah, that's where the bulk of the work is done. And my former boss, Lincoln County Planning Director, Arnold Husing, likes to say that the planning program lives here. I don't know if you've ever seen Arnold talk, but he's very animated. It lives here. Certain counties, you have to adopt plans and codes, again, compliance with the statewide planning goals, address your vision and needs, make decisions, enforce codes, which is usually one of the hardest pieces to do is enforcement. And then assist the public in their dreams of what they want to do with their property. This is a flow chart of everything that goes into local land use decision. So it can be complicated, especially if you're going for, say, exception or parts of the land use system that is not seeing or that people have not encountered regularly. So there's a puzzle that we had to figure out. So there's a lot of case-by-case basis where we have to consult our experts to figure out how to move forward. Okay, this is my little brain break. Any questions so far? No? Anybody online have questions?
Yeah, I had a question, and this kind of goes to what the mayor was talking about. So if I understand correctly, the state requires cities to have land use plans and goals, but those cities can create their own goals and create exceptions to those goals in their plans. Is that correct?
People can apply for exceptions. And actually, I'll just go on that a little bit longer, is when I'm sorry, I'm going to go back a little bit to my goals one. I got too excited about my trivia. I didn't explain more about the goals. So the goal, going back to protecting farmlands, so the core of the system is goal 3 and 4. So goal 3, agricultural lands, and goal 4, forest lands. So these are economic base for state of Oregon. We're a natural resource-based economy. So if you protect those 2 resource lands, then you have all these jobs you're protecting. And so when counties first had to come up with comprehensive plans and zoning, it was basically everything was farm or forest, and then anything you want to be not farm or forest you're going to take exception to goal 3 or goal 4. So so for example, Charleston, that's in the county jurisdiction right now, but it's not a farm or forest. So the county had taken exception because it's already developed. So that was exception to goal 3 and 4 because it's already developed. So irrevocably developed or committed. And so something we refer to those as exception lands. Lands in the county that's not farm or forest are exception lands. So for example, when we're discussing the UGB work of Charleston and Barbie, I wanted to include them in the Coos Bay UGB, that our urban planner, our subject matter expert was saying, well, it's already exception land, so that's kind of an easy lift to include it in the UGB. So I guess so there are exception lands already built into the system, but new exceptions are to be applied for. Is that okay? Enough information?
Yeah, I think that helps me understand the exceptions. I guess what it makes me wonder is, I think the same thing as the mayor, because the town I grew up in, Sherwood, I know 40 years ago, it was all farmland for the most part, and it's since become fairly developed, mostly residential, but there's some larger big box stores and some buildings for larger out-of-state businesses as well being added. And I'm curious, was that the city deciding to change the designation of those lands, or their plans changed? Or I guess help me understand how that development would have taken place.
Well, I guess my first thought is that those lands were included in the urban growth boundary at some point. That's why they're able to be turned into development. So I'm going to now explain a little bit about Goal 14 and Goal 11. So Goal 14, urbanization, says that every city needs to adopt a urban growth boundary. So basically a polygon around your city, maybe beyond your city limits, to say where you can urbanize. And in the land system, urbanize means being able to be served by sewer. So that's what urbanize means, is being served by sewer. So even though, say, Coos Bay is in a rural setting, DLC is going to think of you as an urban place because you have sewer in your community. And same thing, you know, again, going back to Charleston and Barview, those are already urban, those are urbanized, unincorporated communities because they're sewered. And Goal 11 goes hand in hand with Goal 14 because Goal 11 says that, so public facilities and services, now you cannot extend sewer lines outside beyond the UGB. So, so that's to control density of development, to contain the sprawl. So in outside UGBs, to develop a property with no sewer, you need a septic system. And if it was a piece of fresh land, let's say, vacant, that you need to put in a new septic system, you need to have your initial area where the soil is good for the leach, the drain field. And you're going to need another one identified, your repair area, in case the first one fails somehow, say in 20 years, 30 years. So you need a lot of space for a property to develop a single house outside of the UGB, and 2 acres is the minimum. The minimum lot size, that's the rule is 2 acres minimum for rental properties outside urban core boundary. And so 1 acre is 46,000 square feet. So 2 acres is 90,000 square feet. So that's 90,000 square feet for one house. But inside the city, you can have lots as small as 3,000 square feet. So now you have 30 times as many houses density on one, or on the same amount of land, 2 acres. So 30 houses on 2 acres versus one house on 2 acres simply because it's sewered.
So right now, Charleston, the way it is, can only build one house on 2 acres.
No, because it's already sewered.
So how did they become sewered if they're not part of the UGB? How did that happen? But who gave the exception then, I guess?
Well, so I don't know how old Charleston is, but I suspect it was sewer prior to the legal system coming into place. I suspect.
Well, we can get into there's different feelings on this. Back when this Senate Bill 100, theoretically, these were already done. But from my understanding from this process, that it wasn't done properly, and there's some things that need to be changed to make it conform to a DLCD. Because if you go back and talk to a planner that was initiating it when this was doing it, they made that the UGB. Theoretically, these are already UGB areas for the city. But that doesn't conform with DLC at this time. So that's where we have the consultant to help us get through it. Anyway, another story. But that's why Bunker Hill has sewer, and so does Charleston. So. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess maybe to round out the response to the question of Sherwood and how it's been developed, is so Sherwood at some point included all those areas that's developed now in the UGB. So somehow they made that decision, and somehow the lands they include in UGB qualify to be in the UGB. And I can't speak to exactly how that was done, but UGB will be the first step to try to, and then you annex, and then you put sewer in. Any questions?
No, I guess just a comment. That thing in Charleston, when it happened, was a real bitter pill for a lot of those people, because they said, now you have to be on a sewer system. We're running a lateral down the middle of the road, and you have to hook up. And, you know, $4,500, $5,000. This is way back in the late 70s, in the 80s, and people couldn't afford that, but they had to. And I think it's really important that the R2 stays with the sewer. Huge problem down there on Cape Argo Highway, Lighthouse Beach. All those houses, they're on septic, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. So now they say, well, no, you can't add another bedroom. You can't make this any bigger because there's no place for the sewer to go. So and that was DEQ way back when they made the law that said, and I don't know, 73, 74. They said you have to have a certain amount of land for your drain field.
Right.
So anyway, but yeah, the sewer is a real big deal.
It is, yes. It really is, yeah. It's true.
Hi, sorry to interrupt. This is Karen. It's really hard to hear folks if you don't use your microphone online. If you could please do that, that would be so helpful.
If everybody just makes sure they turn their microphone on and speak into the microphone when they talk, but, yeah. I think you have to hug the microphone for people online to really hear well.
Or just complain about sewer and septic systems. Okay. All right, so now we're going to different kinds of decisions. So I have 4 different types here. Type 1, ministerial, and this is not, so I didn't put kinds of land use decisions as my title because ministerial is not technically a land use decision. A land use decision you can appeal. Ministerial decision you cannot appeal. So example of ministerial would be a building permit to build a house or addition to your house, a building permit in general. So say if your neighbor wants to put addition and is bumping out his house closer to where your lot is, but he's meeting all the setbacks and all standards, he gets that building permit. You can't complain like, hey, I want to appeal this decision because I don't like his house being too close to me. You cannot do that. He has property rights, and that's his right to get a building permit to expand his house if he wants to. Another type of ministerial permit or decision is the floodplain development permit. So the floodplain development permit is where if you are in the FEMA flood zone, then you have to have a floodplain development permit because that's FEMA's way of tracking what's going on in the flood zones. And we need to document that for FEMA because FEMA administers the National Flood Insurance Program, which provides a subsidized flood insurance for all property owners and the mortgage holders. And so if we don't have that program, then we can't sell our houses in the flood zone because the flood insurance by private companies will be very expensive. So we have to do the floodplain development permits. Okay. So then type 2, 3, 4 are all land use decisions, so they're all appealable. Type 2 and 3 are what we call quasi-judicial. So quasi-judicial is where you're taking existing code, applying to a specific property. So which means somebody owns a property and has something they want to build on it or a use they want to establish on that property. So they will come and say if it's conditional use, they will apply for the conditional use, and then the existing code for whatever use that is, maybe it's a bed and breakfast, maybe it's, I don't know, a warehouse, maybe it's a conditional use in the industrial zone. Any conditional uses, they will come apply for that. And so a conditional use could be type 2, which is decisions made by staff, so administrative, or type 3, where it goes to a hearing in front of planning commission. And so, and then again, those type 2 and 3, both quasi-judicial, and again, it's taking existing code, applying it to a specific proposal. And type 4, legislative, is you're making new codes, essentially, or changing the comp plan. And this is where the Planning Commission recommends a decision to City Council because City Council is the elected official, so they are the ones who have to adopt the rules for the city because it's legislative. So I'm going to make a slide. So here's the appeal process for quasi-judicial, for legislative. Maybe I shouldn't go there. I don't really know what happens when somebody appeals the legislative decision. But appeal process for quasi-judicial is if it's a staff decision, so administrative, and the appeal goes to a planning commission, which means planning commission will be the next body that hears the appeal and then either uphold or overturn the staff decision. And then if it's planning commission's main decision, then appeal goes to City Council. And then if that's appeal, it goes to Land Use Board of Appeals, or what we call LUBA. And Land Use Board of Appeals was established because early on in the Land Use program, people realized that if we're having circuit courts making all these decisions over all these appeals, because land use is very nuanced, if we want to keep a tight program, we can have courts all over the state making different decisions on these appeals. We need one body to make decisions, so we can have, consistent determinations of what's, what's consistent with the process or not. So that's why LUBA was established. What's that?
How many members are on the LUBA?
I believe it's 3 members for 4-year terms, I believe.
And who appoints them?
I believe the governor.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Here I'm going to sort of just ask you a question. Is relevant for my next slide. What is the record? So can someone, in terms of the land use decisions, land use applications, can someone tell me what, or maybe even a public hearing in general, what is the record? The record.
Troy will have the answer for you shortly. Or maybe Stephanie, I don't know. I don't know.
It's a complete collection of documents, transcripts, and evidence that forms the official basis for the decision. The authoritative paper.
Nice. Yes. So essentially, a paper trail of the decision with everything, tracking everything. See my next slide. Okay, so these are some things that's in the record, but it's not exhaustive list because you can have other things that goes into the decision on paper that's part of the record. So application materials, testimonies, staff report, public hearing proceedings, and then your findings, conclusion, final order. And it gets not exhaustive, so anything else that comes in a decision is part of the record. And as Councilor Crippen said, it's so that a documentation of the process and a decision. So someone, either 5 years or 20 years later, can come and look at, say, this conditional use file and understand how a reasonable person can come to the conclusion that this decision is made consistent with the standards that's written in the record. So that's why the record. And so now we're gonna how the record fits into a fair and impartial tribunal. For quasi-judicial decisions, hearings, you want to be careful of Plan Commission, also City Council, and you needs to be, but Plan Commission mostly because quasi-judicial is the decisions made by Plan Commissions. You want to be careful of ex parte contact, and then conflict interest that applies for both quasi-judicial and legislative, and then bias for quasi-judicial. Bias is not, or conflict of interest is the only one to be worried about for legislative, but for quasi-judicial, you need to worry about also ex parte contact and bias. Now, going to that right now. So ex parte contact is a contact when you are speaking to somebody about an active application or upcoming hearing, not on the record. So there's no paper trail of that communication, of what's been said. And so therefore, if somehow that conversation in the grocery store led you as a planning commissioner or city councilor to influence your decision, but that's not on paper, and nobody can tell how then we have lost that true record of the decision, because that influential piece was ex parte contact and it was not on the record. And so for planning commissioners, when you start hearing, the chair will ask for disclosure of ex parte contact, because it does not disqualify you. You can still describe the nature of the contact. But the thing is, as we all experience as humans, daily basis is two people having a conversation. We can walk away thinking different. We don't recall the conversation the same way. So, which means, when we are trying to disclose it at a public hearing, it's not a recording of the conversation. It's what that person recalled. And so, while it doesn't disqualify you, it can give appearance of, the optics of you've been influenced. So typically we like to advise folks to have sort of a elevator speech or a one-liner. A hearing is upcoming. Please come to a hearing and give us, your comments. But I can't do it here. Thank you. Bye. Just try to excuse yourself. And site visits are also considered to be ex parte contacts. I know in small communities it's hard to not drive by a place that's upcoming, but if you want to see a place, because we all know if you do see a place, then you can kind of understand the application a little bit better. Ask staff for pictures, because same thing as a conversation, two people can go and look at the same thing but see different things, notice different things. So just to say that anything you feel like information-wise you want to know more about the application, ask staff to somehow get it. Don't try to go and look for yourself, because I suppose you could do some research on some stuff, but you want whatever information that's making a decision go into the record. That's kind of the main point, is the record needs to contain all information that's being used for the decision. Okay, again, a place only quasi-judicial must be declared and doesn't disqualify you. Okay, conflict of interest. I don't have my money slide. But conflict of interest has to do with money and only money. And so we have an actual conflict of interest. That means that if you make this decision, then you for sure will gain or lose money from this decision. So it's an actual conflict of interest. And the you is the legal you, is you, your business partner, your kids, your stepkids, your nephew, or your everybody. And this is the definition in the statute of actual conflict of interest. So would be is the word would be. So for sure, it would make you money or lose you money. And the potential is a could be. So it might, it also might not. So my hypothetical example I like to use is if I'm a gravel company in the area, maybe I'm the only one in 200-mile radius, so I have a monopoly of this area. So if I make a decision or land use, maybe that needs a lot of, I think almost just about everything needs gravel. But if I make a decision as a plan commissioner of approving, say, a development, I know I will get a contract for that gravel work because I'm the only game in town. So that's an actual conflict of interest because I will for sure make money. But if I'm one of three in the area, then it's a potential conflict of interest because I will put in the bid for it, but I may not get the bid because there's three. But still looks bad. But, maybe you got a bid because you're plan commissioner. But anyways. So those are actual potential conflict of interest and only has to do with if you for sure will make money or for sure will lose money. Or maybe. But money. Okay, bias. Bias is kind of is when you have made up your mind about a project before the hearing. And it doesn't matter what evidence or any argument people put before you, it's not going to influence your decision at all. You're not going to, have an open mind and look at the thing, reasonably. You already have this set decision in your mind of how it goes. Bias is hard to, I think, prove that somebody had bias, and I think as humans too, we're all using our past experiences to try to evaluate the present, and so it's not to say that you can't have opinion about a proposal. It's just that you have to have an open mind as well to make sure that you're hearing both sides and then evaluating the proposal in a reasonable manner. That's all. Okay, so I'll just read the highlighted section here. So this is the decision maker must apply the adopted criteria for approval that are contained in the zoning code. So we just covered how to hold a fair and impartial tribunal, being careful of ex parte contact, conflict interest, and bias. So once you have that out of the way, then how do you make decision? So how you make decision is looking at the code and seeing, staff report would typically have all the codes that applies to the proposal. And then it will say, the findings of, say, taking information in the application packet and then crosswalking it, so to speak, with the standards in the code so that you can see if the standards are met or not. And so if you're the decision maker, you must apply the adopted criteria, so which will be your zoning code, development code for approval. So let's see. So I think the last two bullets, I'm just trying to read it quickly, is that basically it kind of says stuff like that, that even if you don't agree with the code, you still have to make decisions based on the code. So you have to, if it meets the code, but you don't agree with the code, or you don't like the project, you still have to approve it. And vice versa, if you like the project, but it doesn't meet the code, you still have to deny it. So basically, you just have to follow the code, what the code says. And some codes are open interpretation, obviously, discretionary. So we have a hearing. Okay, so just to drill the point home is that it's all about code, and only the applicable criteria or the code sections are to be used in the decision. And so in a hearing, you will have folks come and either proponent or opponents, they will make, impassioned comments about something. And it's not to say that it's not valid, but it has to address the code criteria for it to actually influence decision. Because that's, going back to the process, the code is part of our process. The code was made by process, adopted by the council or board of commissioners. So that's what we have to use for making decisions for these land applications. It's kind of small. So I have a little scenario to practice on, and I'll read it to you. The scenario is, applicant wants to operate a hotel in a zoning district that does not allow hotels, but allows multifamily dwellings such as apartment house. The applicant applies for an apartment house and submits the below floor plan. I don't know if you can see the floor plan very easily, but I'll read the apartment house and hotel definitions to you. And these are definitions are from an actual code, zoning code, from a small city on the south coast. Apartment house means a building or a portion thereof designed, built, rented, leased, let, or hired out to be occupied or which is occupied or is the home or residence of 3 or more families living independently of each other and doing their own cooking in a building, and shall include flats and apartments. So that's what apartment house is by the code of this one city on the south coast. I think they need to rework that definition a little bit. Hotel means any building containing guest rooms which are rented or hired out to be occupied for sleeping purposes for guests, excluding any facility which meets the definition of bed and breakfast facility. Okay, so those are your code criteria, essentially, the two definitions I just read to you. And the application is for apartment house. And then the floor plan that's submitted is that. So now you, as a plan commissioner or city council, have to decide whether this floor plan meets the definition of a apartment house or not. Therefore, should you approve it or deny it?
It does not meet it. There's no kitchen in any of them.
Yes. Yes. So, yes, even though they're calling it apartment house, but it doesn't meet the definition because you can't cook in any of those units. Yes, thank you. Oh, another brain break. Any questions? No, okay. All right. Okay, now I'm going to tell you a little bit about Oregon Coastal Management Program. So I work for DLCD. I also work for Oregon Coastal Management Program. And I will save how to set up for my slides down. So the Oregon Coastal Management Program applies applies in the Oregon Coastal Zone, and the dark green that you see is the Oregon Coastal Zone, which is essentially the boundary is the top of the coastal range, so top of the crest of the mountain down to the ocean. So essentially all the coastal watersheds is in our coastal zone. It's approved by NOAA. And so, but before we go on, I'll make sure that we are all on the same page about what a watershed is, because that word gets tossed around a lot. And I've asked this question to many different audiences, including PhDs at NOAA, and we were not on the same page. Anyway, so what is a watershed? The word watershed is a compound word. It's water and shed. Is shed a verb, as a dog shedding fur to the left, or is shed a noun as a tool shed as holding tools? So is the watershed shedding water, or is it holding water? Raise your hand if you think it's a verb that is shedding water. Raise your hand if you think it's a noun and it's holding water. Okay, all right. Anybody online want to raise their hands for anything or type in the chat? No. Okay. So it is a verb. It's the area that drains all the water to the same spot. So the river mouth. So if you're in the Umpqua watershed, it's Douglas County. Douglas County is essentially the Umpqua watershed. So all the landmass in Douglas County drains to the mouth of the Umpqua River. So it's shedding, so it's water shedding all down to a point. So then the coastal watersheds all shed down from the coastal, the top, the crest to the ocean.
So we were wrong.
Yes, sir. So
Geographic area that holds that water that sheds it somewhere, right?
Well, so hydrology is quite complex, and I don't know how water flows everywhere, but I believe there are instances where the groundwater possibly contains water from more than one watershed, because it could somehow trickle down, right? If you are, say, I don't know, a river valley because you can divide watersheds into little sub-watersheds, right? Your tributaries all shed into one, and then you all drain into one.
Like an aquifer?
Right, like an aquifer may be fed by more than one watershed. I'm sure that happens somewhere on the earth. So Mississippi River, for example, that's the watershed we've got in the U.S., and it drains all the way from Minnesota, or like way up there, and then all the way down to Louisiana. It's one huge watershed. So again, it's shedding. So important. Why I'm stressing this point is because land use. It has to do with land use, because the water sheds over the land surface, and so we're using our land in a good way. Then when the water passes through, it is also healthier for, again, the fish downstream or instream. Okay, so shedding water. So in my very simple mountain, when it rains and the water sheds on the left side, because of a triangle, so on the left side is same mountain, left side is watershed A, right side is watershed B. And gravity wins. Okay, so the Coastal Zone Management Act of 1972 created this network of coastal management programs. So the United States recognize that we need to somehow have a cohesive way of managing our coastlines so that we can protect national interest first and foremost. Most cities, major cities in the world, many of them anyway, are located on a river because river waterways are your traditional methods of moving goods. And so big cities are typically on rivers or bays because goods, trade, economic development. So, which is, part of what for Coos Bay we want to do is to bring trade. And so, the CZMA, 1972, created coastal management programs and also a sister program of the National Estuarine and Resource Reserve system, which we have one, the South Slough. It's the first one. That's right. So, we are sister programs, and basically for the coastal management programs, it's all voluntary. So the state comes up with a program saying, this is our program, this is our coastal zone, and once you get approved by NOAA gives you 2 carrots. 1 carrot is the money to run the program. So most of my teammates on the Oregon Coastal Management Program where our salaries are paid by this Coastal Zone Management Act. The second carrot is the Federal Consistency Authority, which says because we, federal government, because we, NOAA, approved your coastal program, then anything the federal government does in your coastal program, your coastal zone, so for us, all the coastal watersheds, has to be consistent with your coastal management program. So, which is why Jordan Cove couldn't move through. And so, because Jordan Cove, they needed a permit from FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. That was our federal nexus to say, okay, now, because the federal nexus is the permit, now, basically DLCD or Oregon Coastal Management Program, now we have this Federal Consistency Authority to review the actions that goes with that permit to see if it's consistent with our program or not. And our program, well, I'm just going to jump to this real quick. It's a network program, and it includes the codes and comprehensive plans and regulations of all the coastal cities and all the coastal counties, and also 11 state agencies. So DLCD, we're the coordinator of Oregon Coastal Management Program. But the rules of these 10 other state agencies and all coastal cities and counties are included in our program. So, which means we are kind of a steward of the program, and so we'll coordinate. So when Jordan Cove, say, came and had to be reviewed, we would coordinate with, say, DEQ or FNW, get comments, figure out what's going on, and then see if this action, the proposed action, is meeting our program or not. And my understanding is that it couldn't get a DEQ permit. So by not being able to get that permit, it was an objection to that project.
So,
yeah,
probably just a comment more than anything. Just based on what you're saying, my head's going spinning just listening to you tell me about it. The regulatory process for anybody to get anything approved seems very difficult.
Well,
you've got to have 11 state agencies agree. You got to have all those people to agree. You got to have your group agree. You got to have FERC agree. You got to. I mean, the process gets to the point where it's almost not worth the investment and the years it takes to get through that process. Is there a way that we could help entities streamline that process? I mean, we don't want to destroy our coast. I mean, this is here for a purpose. But there's got to be a way to streamline that so an entity that meets those requirements doesn't have to spend $100 million in 10 years trying to jump through everybody's hoops. Is that an accurate? Does that make sense? It's kind of a.
I get what you're coming from completely. It is a lot of hoops to jump through, and it can take 10 years and $100 million. Right. Yes.
And that's all speculative.
Yes. Yes.
No.
Correct.
Right.
So the streamlining part is, I think, I don't know if that's possible. Well, because, you know, so I always say the Oregon Coastal Management Program is different from say, other states. We are very comprehensive in our program. Like California, for example, I believe their coastal zone, unlike our coastal watersheds, which makes ecological sense because our water that's draining into the ocean should be considered coastal. So the California coastal zone is only 1,000 feet from shore. So they just have a really long strip, that's their coastal zone, where they apply their coastal rules to. And one of my previous colleagues who was working in the for consistency position, she had come up with this graph of how many, so we call these enforceable policies. So not every code in your book is part of the Oregon Coastal Management Program. The rules that we submit to NOAA saying these are all our rules. So because NOAA says you can't, also your rule to be submitted as part of the approved program has to be enforceable. So NOAA has like 7 criteria of what's enforceable. For example, one of them is like it has to say shall and not may, so that you can actually defend it. Like you shall do this, it's not the open-ended, or you may or may not. It can't say trump any federal regulations, stuff like that. So there's 7 of them, and so that graph, so my former colleague made a graph of analyzing how many enforcement policies are there across the coastal programs, you know, that we have. I think it's like 33 coastal management programs that includes U.S. territories, so states and territories. And I believe, I try to like, where's that graph again? I want to see that graph. When I see in my mind, I recall it being like 1,000 some enforcement policies for Oregon. So the bar graph is like this tall. And then for other ones, it's like really short. And probably not 4 digits. So we do have a lot of enforcement policies in our coastal zone because we're very comprehensive. And actually, it reminds me to pass out my handy-dandy Citizen's Guide to the Oregon Coastal Management Program, only 42 pages long.
Okay, thank you.
I know you want one. And I got one for you guys. So this packet, it does talk about the leadership program in general, so all the other goals besides the coastal goals, but also the coastal program as well. So everything you want to know about basically land use in coastal area is in that, and we're going to update it too because that one's from 2014. Let's see. So back to your question of can we streamline it? Again, because we do include all these state agencies in our program, that just coordination of trying to review one project, it's already kind of, and then if you're trying to change, it's a beast. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, make sure you could hear that, Sarah.
So I had a quick question. When you file a core permit, a joint application, it goes to at least 9 different agencies. LCDC is like the last one to report on this and to look at it. And I guess this is more of a comment than it is anything else. But it's kind of like when you go to the doctor. If they don't find something wrong, then he hadn't done his job. It seems to me that by the time these are handed to all these agencies, they all get a poke at it, and there's really nothing constructive about it. Here again, I don't mean to buck the system, but you go to Safeway and buy a can of soup, you got a can of soup. You go to the insurance company and you buy insurance for your car, well, you've kind of got the reassurance if you get an offender bender, they may pay you. You buy a permit, and all you're getting is a blessing. You're not getting any help with your project. So I'm just bogged down by this. Purpose and need, that's the beginning. But somehow all this stuff, and like, I'm not sure, why is NOAA jumping into Fish and Wildlife? Do they have, I mean, maybe they don't have the enforcement and they have to use Fish and Wildlife to do that? It seems like it's getting so complex that it's just a very difficult system. And I don't mean to complain, but gosh, it seems like there should be a better way.
You're absolutely right. It is very complex, and so it's academically it's called fragmented governance, where there's overlapping jurisdiction all the time. You have your spatial jurisdiction, like Department of State lands. They have your submerged and submersible lands of the state. That's their jurisdiction. But then there may be resources within that geography that say ODFW. So you have to. So it's everybody's trying to regulate, all the different resources, but overlapping jurisdiction. So yes, it can be very hard to go through a process. And so land planners, we're sometimes, we're typically the coordinators of these permits, because we know who and which permits or who you need to talk to. But I know sometimes if it's not land use action, then maybe you don't interface with the land planner to also figure out that that network, I guess, of permits. Yeah. I mean, I hear you. It's complex. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Councillor Matthews has his hand
Okay.
raised online.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to chime in that for me, we did this exercise about what is land use planning, and the concept of planning for the good of our entire community or our citizenry is really essential, which is why we do this. And I understand that people just want to go in and do whatever they want to do with their land or their project, but something on the coast has effects that do impact the rest of the community, and that's why we do this. And so, Troy, you said something about it being, well, if a company does qualify in all these different ways, then why can't they do it? Well, they can. They just have to apply and make sure that it does. And it's something for me that gives me a bit of reassurance that companies aren't just going through and just going to do. I can't just trust every company to have the best interest of our community. I can't do that. So this process is essential in my mind for us to be able to know where we're going and what we're trying to build. We can't just blindly trust that a company has done all the work and knows all the rules. So I wholeheartedly disagree with the fact that this is too much. I realize that it is a lot, but it is what we do as a community. Our city has rules and regulations for land use, and thank God we do. Otherwise, people would just be doing whatever they want, and our community would be a wreck, in my opinion. So, there was another comment about going and buying a can of soup, and you get a can of soup, and then you go and you get a permit, you get a blessing. Yeah, you get a blessing on behalf of the entire community to do what it is that you're proposing. You buying a can of soup is just you. That's fine. You could do that. But when you're impacting an entire community, it's important. So I appreciate what we're going through in this process and learning this, but I would ask people to look at this from a community standpoint instead of an individualistic standpoint. And the fact that we're doing this for the good of all of us, that's my comment.
I think it's a great comment, Carmen, and I'm not disagreeing with that in any way. I agree that as a community, we want to try to make sure what we're doing works, well, as we talked about land use, it works for what we're needing now and what we're doing in the future, and doesn't destroy what we consider our environment. for our future generations. That being said, we are this coastal community, so it's not like we can not go through this process, and the process is way too cumbersome for any entity to try to navigate through. So while I believe that the things that we're asking them to do are appropriate, I think a way of helping them through that could be simplified so that they can meet those requirements, meet what you're saying protects our community, but at the same time is not, it seems it's more punitive at this point. It's really difficult for them to try to find out what it is they need to do and then meet those requirements, because you're having to do that for 11 different people. Did that make any better sense of understanding what you're saying is accurate? It should just be easier for an entity to figure out a way to work through that process so they can meet all those requirements.
I would agree that having clarity on what is required and helping entities to go through the process is something that would help streamline the understanding and the entire process and save money, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, and that's all I was really saying. Yep.
You have to go through all these different departments, and I hear people complain about building permits all the time, but we have them so that our buildings are safe for the public, and that is imperative.
Agreed.
Does that mean we stop trying to improve that process? Absolutely not. We always want to improve that process.
Right.
But it's an essential part of the process. It's streamlining and can sometimes sound like skirting the responsibility. And unfortunately, that was the kind of what I was hearing a little bit. It's like,
And this,
we meet all the requirements, why can't we just do it? Well, you have to show that you do. And so that's where I'm coming from, is that we have to show it. Can we streamline it? I think we should. I think that will save money. I think that will make, everybody's life better if we can, figure out how to do this in a more efficient manner. Absolutely.
I agree, and we're saying the same thing. We want to encourage development, but we got to make it easier for the people doing development to make sure to check those boxes.
and I was going to say, just to your point, way that people have different perspectives. I didn't hear you saying we need to water this down. We just need to make it a little bit easier. Maybe that's timing, however it's done, so that it doesn't get drug out so far. But the due diligence is done, and I think all of y'all made very good points, but I didn't hear anyone saying, let's just water it down so we can push this through either.
No, that's not it.
And if
I did not say that. I said that it could be interpreted as such. I did not say anybody said that. I just am glad that it's clarified that we agree that planning and that regulations are imperative for the good of our community. And that's basically my goal, and it sounds like everybody's in agreement with that as well. So I'm, just wanted to throw it out there. And
Good.
give hopefully a point of clarification.
I just wanted to let everybody know on the point of streamlining, while it's not a process set in stone, the community, the agencies know the port is pursuing a project, and the way that we collectively are trying to streamline that for the applicant is real preemptive. We've been meeting regularly, the agencies, local municipalities, and talking with the information we know, talking about what are the implications, what are going to be the roadblocks, and trying to kind of compile that information in advance so that we have that kind of conversation back and forth early and often. And so it's happening. It's not, probably ever going to be simple, but we are making strides to try.
Yeah, I think that's great. And that's
it.
really proactive by all the entities involved to be on top of it and saying, hey, how do we make sure that all the boxes are being checked?
Yep.
And I will add that I like the analogy of a building permit to a larger permit process because these processes are very fact-based, and a decision can be made completely different if one little fact is different. And so when people complain about, say, building permits, maybe they're not giving the building official everything that he needs to make sure he understands that this building will be built safely, up to standards. And so sometimes I think for these larger projects, that's kind of what, where I think during Cove too is where it got to is they couldn't provide enough information details for, say, DEQ to give them an affirmative decision on a permit. It's just very fact-based. So the more facts the applicant can provide to the interagency team that Chelsea's referring to, that we're meeting regularly, the better that we can advise you on which permit and when and all that kind of stuff. So, I think it's definitely a two-way street. The more information that we have, the better that we can advise you on how to go through the process. And then I think I have this one slide that I skipped over. Yep, this one. So where does the FERC consistency applies? We talked about the coastal management zone, so our coastal watersheds, but also applies to a territorial sea, which, again, is state jurisdiction, so it's 3 miles out, 3 nautical miles from the shore. And then we also can apply it to this marine renewable energy GLD. GLD stands for Geographic Location Description, which doesn't mean very much, but all it is that when these coastal management programs developed, people are saying, well, there are projects that can happen, maybe not in the coastal zone, but still affects the coastal zone. And so if a coastal management program can write a geologic location description for a certain use type, and NOAA approves it, then anything that happens within that geography and for that use type, then DLCD also gets to review. And so this is why we're deeply involved in the offshore wind energy process, because when the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management have a lease auction for wind energy areas off our coast, that's a further action. That's our nexus. For okay, now we get to do our FERC consistency review again, and so that's why that's how we are able to plug into the offshore wind energy conversation. But when we wrote it originally, it was actually for wave energy, but because it's marine renewable energy, that we can apply it to also wind energy.
Will NOAA oversee the wind energy to be located or not? Because the way this has been started is the federal agencies just coming through and saying this is what's going to happen. And then the governor and got DLCD involved, and we've been pushing back and making we go through a process. Because before, I didn't see that happening.
I think the federal agencies, BOEM, made a lot of major mistakes in their efforts. Yeah. And then I think also, I think those initial mistakes really cost them of being able to go through the process more smoothly with us, the state of Oregon, and local jurisdictions, because a lot of the complaints during that process was, how come you already made up your mind on where you're going to lease? How come we didn't have any input? And how come you didn't, analyze all the impacts that could happen, if you, and how come you didn't talk to all these other people before you decided which area of the ocean you're going to rent out to people, essentially. So we are currently undergoing an offshore wind energy roadmap effort to try to get in front of that process if it comes down again, because right now, there's a moratorium on all offshore wind energy development. So we're able to actually take that time and to get our state process better, and to see how can we plug in, and what we're going to ask of BOEM when this comes down, if it comes down again. So I think that we didn't necessarily have, so I think our decision that we submitted was concurrence with conditions. So we're okay, we will concur with you leasing these areas, but we have conditions if you do lease them. But then we all know that, the lease failed, nobody bid, so, but again.
I thought there was one, but it's immaterial. But
Yeah.
Who put the moratorium on, the federal or the state?
The moratorium,
Was the governor or the state?
it was President Trump. One of the first day executive order was a moratorium on offshore wind,
All right.
or temporary pause. I forgot what the language was.
Federal then.
It was federal, yes, yeah, right. So, because it was federal agency that was leasing it, so the federal government had the most pull to stop that, yeah. And that is all I have for you.
We didn't ask enough questions.
Thank you so much for being here tonight and your questions and comments,
I
and
didn't want to
appreciate it.
Are there any questions for anybody online or here?
I was thinking, you're right, we asked a lot. I just want to thanks for the time and
No, absolutely.
coming down and explaining.
Absolutely.
There's a lot to it, and it's very complex, so it's, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just add, my team and myself, we're happy to do more information for you like this, deep dive into other topics if you would like. We can certainly do that, yeah.
Yeah, and way before you came on, I don't remember anyone representing the coast as you do and coming down as frequently as you do, and it makes a big difference. It helps, I know, our staff, and definitely helps us to understand and get through difficult situations. So, so I don't know who was in your spot before. There was no
Dave Perry.
Okay. Well, anyway, you make a presence that I'm aware of all the time, and I know to our staff. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, very nice. I think you kind of you made a layman's version of this and made it a lot more understandable. So, no, I think great job.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Now you got to drive back.
Is that?
You live in Yachats, right?
I live in Newport. I moved. Yeah, from Yachats to Newport. A little bit closer, yeah. I'm going home tonight. Yeah, yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I will be back on Thursday. Wow. Because the summit. Yeah.
Adjourn? I didn't know we had to adjourn a work session, did we? All right, I'm getting the nod to adjourn. Okay, we're adjourned.